So that's funny about weird money things, because
Yeah.
as we were just saying, I got my haircut this morning, went to a different spot, cash only. And I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
who carries cash? Well, apparently I'm carrying cash now because I really like the barber.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, missing out on barber time. There's this awesome spot in Calgary that I used to go to. Shout out to Steve. And it old school, right? Like I started going there in the 90s, and like there's men's magazines on the table, and back then, there'd be like ashtrays, and people would hang out for hours in there and
Yeah.
just chat about world events and money and
Yeah.
the expense of everything, and who can get you a deal? Like if you
Yeah.
need a deal, the barbershop is the place to go.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Now,
that's the same now for
yeah,
you.
well, I haven't been to a barber since the 90s, so I really can't tell you. Well, with all of that being said about our haircuts, welcome to episode 2 of Money Makes It Weird podcast. Hair makes it weird, apparently, too. I'm Matt Haze, and this gentleman right here,
Chris Fox,
financial planner at Fox Financial. Glad to have you here. And I'm glad with everything that is going on in the entertainment world that our show has not been canceled.
we have said nothing controversial.
We have said absolutely nothing
Yet.
controversial, and luckily my boss here has not canceled our show. So this is great.
This is Canada.
That's
we
true.
have the CBC that is paid to slag our government. I love
That's
it.
right. And
government funded to slag the government.
That's right. And you guys have I love the comedy that the CBC puts up, because news is such a great panel show. I mean, there's been so many great, I miss Rick Mercer.
No kidding. I was just thinking about him.
He needs to come
See you
on
next
back.
Tuesday.
He's hiding over there, over in Atlantic Canada, just taking his book money now. It's like, we need Rick. This is that time now when we really need him to come back out of retirement.
Yeah.
So this week, we are getting into what makes money weird, and we're going to be digging into a lot of the stories of the internet. Every week, we're going to be finding some stories on Reddit, on the websites, on the Twitter, on the Facebook, on the whatever, and getting some stories even from Chris's world, from clients, from people that he's run into over the years. He's a young whippersnapper, so just the few years he's been doing.
That's
this,
right.
so
Just
absolutely.
a couple.
Just a couple.
Green.
Absolutely. Very, very green, just like the green in the background there of his shop.
Right.
And we're going to be taking these stories and talking about, what Chris would recommend and how money makes just life and people and relationships weird, and dig into that. And hopefully you'll get some lessons that you can use then as well when it comes to your money and personal financing, your wealth. And this week, it's about protecting your money, making sure that your money is protected, making sure your family's money is protected, and what you can do, whether you're starting on out, whether you're in the middle of a situation, or there's some sort of emergency. What can you do? And we're going to dig into the stories on Reddit of people and their emergency situations. Chris, you ready to get into our first story of the podcast?
Yeah.
All right. First one, we're going to Personal Finance Reddit, and with the title of this post that was posted just a few days ago, Is Getting Everything in Writing Just Smart Planning or Overkill? So here's what our poster said from Wildly Glaring. I'm engaged and moving in with my partner soon, and we're starting to combine finances. We're both in our 30s, decent earners, and have some assets saved up, but nothing crazy. But enough that we don't want to mess it up. I've been reading a lot about prenups and postnups lately, and what surprised me is that they're not just about divorce prep. They can actually cover how debts are handled, protect inheritance, or even set up rules for future financial decisions. That made me think of it less as a doomsday plan and more like a structured financial planning, but I can't shake this stigma. Part of me feels like bringing it up makes it sound like I don't trust my partner, even though the opposite is true, and I want to be on the same page and avoid dumb fights later. Has anyone gone through this, and did it actually make things easier down the road? So, Chris, For this person
Loaded.
that's been in this situation, and I'm sure you've had people that have come down the pike, people that are just, that have started their finances started early,
Hmm.
retiring, they're starting working on their retirement, and then they fell in love. No, they had that unfortunate situation of falling in love, and they're like,
Everything went sideways.
what do you say? And what have
Wow.
you told people that in your office about a situation like this?
I've had a lot of clients move in together first,
Hmm.
and they'd be moving into one or another's house.
Hmm.
Um, and to protect themselves, a rental agreement or a cohabitation agreement makes
Yeah.
sense. From the person that owns a house, they could be considered common law when maybe it doesn't work out that way, and then that asset needs to be split up. So that's not a bad idea. It's really interesting. The prenup with spending guidelines and debt repayment, that's new to
Mm.
me. I think that could be a conversation. Like,
Yeah.
I usually say, especially when people are getting together, is like, yeah, keep stuff separate for now.
Hmm.
Maybe you have a joint bank account for all that expenses, right? And then what happens, everyone's different. What happens when, okay, 2 years go by, you're getting engaged. Now, is that the matrimonial home? How does, the previous owner feel about it? And do they just say, well, I'm in this forever, so I guess half of my stuff is yours and not? So I don't know. I think it's a touchy one, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's a little bit different. And I think I can see totally how people get nervous and, does this person love me? Should it matter? Well, things go sideways, right?
Yeah.
So,
Do you
so,
do you recommend to your clients, when it comes to their money, when they get to that point, to
hmm
protect themselves and have this type of paperwork, in
hmm
place? Well, how do you feel about it when your clients ask you, if someone asks you so straight up, should I get a prenup? Especially if they've maybe a little bit older in life
yeah.
too.
Second
They're in their
marriage,
30s,
right?
second marriage or whatever. They
Yeah.
have a nest egg that they've worked very hard and they really want to protect it. What
Makes
would you say to
sense.
them?
Yeah, when you're blending families and one person has a couple of kids, the other person has a couple of kids, or whatever the dynamic is, and they each have their own money. And I've seen where they want to give that to their kids, like the spouse can take care of themselves, right? And that
Yep.
makes sense when you're like, well, this is for my kids. Are you cool with that? Right? Do the will that way. And I don't know if a prenup's necessary, but it's not a bad idea, right? To
Yeah.
protect yourself. And even, older, what I see more in my practice is, you know, unfortunately, in my age group, our parents are starting to pass away.
Mhm.
So my friends and clients are receiving an inheritance, and where I'm at in Alberta, if that money is put into a joint account, now it's joint money. If it's kept separate, it's separate. So that's a discussion we'll be having more often. And then I just let the client decide, right?
Yeah.
What do you want to do? Do you want to commingle this or not? Everyone's different.
True.
Sometimes you expect that it'll go in joint, and then no, I'm going to keep this separate. I'm like, okay, no
Yeah.
judgment, but interesting, right?
True.
And you just never know.
Plus, too, the type of like you mentioned about like commingling families and all too, the type of relationships people have now have changed. It's
Oh,
not as always as traditional. Like I'm 43 years old. My girlfriend is in her, now late 30s. I love saying that. She doesn't love me saying that, but she was married before.
mm-hmm,
And, we don't really have any plans to, get that traditional married in any way, shape, or form. We're
yeah,
not going to have kids. We don't want to do that. So we have kind of a unique relationship that way, but we still
mm-hmm,
have conversations about finance and,
yeah,
what we want to do, how we do things, but we still keep, things separate in our own ways
mm-hmm,
at that point. So what does, so each situation is going to be different, obviously. So,
yeah,
before we move on to our next story that we have, for someone that might be in the situation, or maybe even, couples that are, might be in a situation where they feel they didn't have those conversations at the beginning, or maybe things have changed.
mm-hmm.
How does one approach their spouse and say, hey, we should
Right?
have this conversation. What are the questions they should ask? Or how do they get their spouse to get in the door and sit down and have their conversation with their financial planner to
Yeah.
say, let's go through this? What would you tell them?
Don't spring it on them.
Yeah.
Don't ambush. Say, hey, we're going to go see Chris, and then by the way, we're talking about this when we get in there. I mean, my wife's going to laugh when she hears this. Communication is key, as you know,
Yeah.
and the reason she's going to laugh because I'm a clam, and I don't talk about anything, according to my wife, whom I love very much. Putting that out there, whom I love very much, and so that having. Maybe not doing it all at once.
Mhm.
If you haven't had that conversation, maybe just saying, hey, I was thinking about, how are things going to look or, in retirement? Like, what does retirement look like for you? What are you thinking we'll do?
Yeah.
Have you thought about that? I mean, that's a huge question in itself. And then, there's so many facets that go around that. And, if you're in your 30s or 40s, that can be so far off, but it's good to have an idea, or at least a general idea of where you're heading. You're not going to end up at your destination if you don't have a target, and just gentle little, oh, we did this, the mortgage payments are this way. Do you think it's more fair to do it this way because you make more than me? So maybe you pay 2/3 and I pay 1/3, or, like just gentle chipping away at those conversations, but talking about them, I think is key. Maybe paperwork is, depending on previous relationships, how it went. I mean, if someone had a really negative experience in their divorce, the paperwork makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't want that to happen. Yes, I love you. It's a contract. It's there for a reason, just in case things go sideways. It's
Yeah.
not the be all end all, but at least it's a floor, right? It's kind of like a
Yep.
business. I hate to say marriage is a business. It's not, but in a business contract, you're setting the ground rules, right? And if you think those may change with your partner, then maybe you need to put that in paper, right?
Love that. All right, let's move on to our next story as we're continuing our theme about protecting yourself and protecting your money. From personal finance, we're going to dig into about parents that might have gotten into a sticky situation and what the kids can do to help. As someone who has a parent who is semi-retired and I am helping to keep an eye on the finances, I understand that it can be sometimes stressful. And,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of, there's a kind of a shift when you're kind of also now helping out the parents and feeling that adult side and that change in relationships. So I totally understand that. But
Yeah.
title of this story on Reddit is Please Help. The unimaginable just happened. Parents can't be trusted with their own retirement, from Sergeant Dollface. How do people come up with their Reddit names? I have no
I have
idea.
no idea.
So without going into details, just found out that my parents were talked into an incredibly risky startup investment by their financial advisor. And
Ooh.
get this, he is also one of the founders and isn't likely illegal,
Oh.
and lost a big chunk of their money. They had an agreement of what they were okay with investing is risky stuff, and this was way over it. Clearly, they can't be trusted to protect their own interests if someone is really charismatic and confident comes along. We, the kids, are thinking we need to set some sort of legal agreement that they can't withdraw over a certain amount of money without talking to just one of us first and getting our okay. That would have prevented all of this. What kind of legal person do I need to talk to about this? What should I do? Sorry if this is already a post on here. I'm too frazzled to think straight right now. I don't blame you there, Sergeant Dollface. I don't think you need to apologize for that. I could not imagine. And by the way, there's so many stories of people that just get scammed even out of like $1,000, $2,000 now with,
Yeah.
over the phone. I can only imagine
Yeah.
that someone you're supposed to trust, a financial advisor,
Mm-hmm.
takes that. So you
Yeah.
hear this, what would you say to them?
I mean, I totally feel for the parents that lost the money.
Yeah.
Right. And the advisor was in the wrong 100%. Sounds like, with not knowing all the details, but, I imagine, should be putting the client's interests before his own, and not getting them to invest in his own company. whatever that startup was. Wow, that's horrible.
Yeah.
The flip side of that, so that being said, I've never had a client come say to me, I can't trust my parents on how they're investing, right? If there's a health issue, right? A
Hmm.
dementia or something that's totally different. And I get that taking over the investment decisions for a parent. But I can't imagine, if my dad, who was in the business, smart guy,
Hmm.
if he lost whatever, 50 grand in a bum investment, which would be significant for him for sure.
Yeah.
Um, for me to tell him you're not allowed to do your investments anymore, that would be like a no-go.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And I just can't see, even me as a parent, if my daughter came to me one day and said, you can't be trusted with your money, that seems like a control thing that I wouldn't be happy with.
Yeah.
Right. So if there's health issues for sure. And I think it's more a matter of, in this case, kind of there's looks like a legal issue here. Right.
Right.
They're, talking to a lawyer and a securities lawyer with securities experience, going after this person, whoever their dealer is. I mean, in Canada, it would be going to my dealer, complaining, written complaint, and get all the regulators involved. And
Right.
it would come, it's obvious if it's the way it is that the advisor would be out of the industry and retribution would be made. But, so I think it's more of a legal thing, here, but it's the kids taking over that
Yeah.
I don't know what you think, but it's like, really? Like,
Yeah.
what'd your parents do?
Yeah, it's funny. First off, in Canada, you're lucky that, I've heard conversations, from, interviews about that, people within IPC, your organization, have had with the regulators there in
Hmm.
Canada and how proactive they are in making sure that people's wealth are protected and why the laws are the way they are. So,
Yep.
for someone that would be in this situation in Canada, to have the regulators to be able to sweep in and try to be able to help them and protect them and be able to try to claw some of that money back.
Hmm.
You're very lucky in Canada to have such great governmental organizations. Here in the States, we don't even know if we have people in government that are hired at this point in offices that can do anything
Yeah.
anymore. We're in a very weird situation. With that being said, I
Mm.
feel for the kids as well because I as someone, like I said, I have a parent, who is semi-retired and, I don't have access to the money where like I'm in control, but I see the money and,
Mhm.
I hear, hey, I want to take the grandkids to Disney or do this. And it's like, that's great. But, I've had conversations with their financial advisor and we know you still have to be protective and careful of the money and
Mhm.
not get too crazy
Mm.
because,
Mhm.
that now my mom's situation is different because my mom and dad had a certain plan and that plan changed because my father passed away earlier
Mm.
than planned and then
Sorry.
so well, it's okay so that whole situation changed so
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
that worked out is different so the money has to
Mhm.
that plan changed so
Needs
that's
to
a
be
different situation.
responsibly. And so would your
Yeah.
mom, so you said you talked to her advisor.
Yeah.
So you're obviously a party of that. You're part to that information.
Right.
And that, for this Redditor to be part of that, I think makes great sense that she can be
Absolutely.
involved. Gently.
Yeah,
I
absolutely
I just
but
like,
I
you know.
Yeah, but I can't also like, I can give suggestions to my mom and say, "We should do this, we should do that,"
Mhm.
but she still has the final say. I
Yeah,
don't have the
right?
legal entity to be able to do that. I mean, albeit I have
Yeah.
access to the passwords and all of that so I can see, but I know
Yep.
better not to do that. For legal reasons, there's no reason for me to do that.
Yeah.
I do think there's a little bit of a missing piece with this that we
Mhm.
don't know of I wonder and I hope the relationship with this has gotten better, albeit there is an updated here. So let's read this. I've got a clearer picture with all the helpful stuff, people, and thanking and talking more with my parents. It looks like this is more of an issue of probable fraud. The finance
Mm.
guy is a fiduciary and probably broke some major ethical
Yeah.
lines and legal ones. I'm finding a lawyer. That's good. My mom
Good.
is at least getting a sense of how serious this is and will hopefully push back more going forward. That's good.
Good.
But I still think, you know, that does make an interesting question though for, you know, where is that line of as parents are getting older, even though, yes, for the sick side of it, as
Mm-hmm.
if there's the medical side and then children have to get
Mm-hmm.
more involved, especially, if there's the mind element and a parent doesn't have the mental state to be able to make that decision. Is
Mm-hmm.
there a way to be able to structure it where the kids have a little bit more control because
Mm-hmm.
they know the parents might not be able to keep an eye on things or be able to
Yeah.
do that? Like,
Yeah.
how does that work out?
Yeah.
Like, is
Well,
there a way to be
even
able to do that?
yeah, I think so. I mean, inviting your kids to the meeting with your planner, like in your kid situation,
Yeah,
that's great because then they have a comfort level and they
yeah,
know the advisor. And the advisor can once, I think depending on documentation or legality and we're just jurisdictionally,
yeah,
um, if the advisor sees something in your mom that you don't see in the sense of, oh, she's changing her mind a lot, or she's not acting the way she normally does, she's getting easily emotional about things, then they can contact you and say, hey,
right.
Matt, things aren't great. Let's, have a conversation with your mom. Can we do a joint meeting? Can we see what's going on here? Right.
Right.
And smooth things out. And then you can make a call of, oh, you know what? Maybe mom, if you don't want to deal with this, I can help.
Yep.
You'll still see everything. I'll still discuss everything with you. But I think, when it comes to the income and the portfolio management, we can have this. I can help you. Right.
Right.
And make it that simple. Right. And
Right.
hopefully they're going to trust you.
And yeah, it feels
Mom's
like
going to trust you. Right.
it feels like we need to have this relationship very early on
Mm,
before they're even at that point where they retire. So even like
yeah.
a few years before they retire of, okay, we know that you're getting
Mm-hmm.
going to get older. We know you
Mm-hmm.
did the paperwork for your will and trust and you have all that planned, but I still would like to be part of knowing what that part of the retirement is.
Yeah.
So that way, if something does happen, if
Mm-hmm.
one of the parents does pass away, I can still be of help. I know where everything is. I know what the numbers are. I can be of help
Yeah.
that way. And, if you guys do need help down the line, at least I already
Yeah.
know that information. I don't need to have to be part of, so deep into that. That's not my place. That's still your
Yeah.
money. You earned all that. But at least have that honest conversation maybe a little bit earlier. So that way,
Mm-hmm.
when you're at that point where you need to be part of it, it's not so jaunting when you
Yeah.
get all that information. You're like,
Yeah.
oh, now I have access to that.
Yeah. Yeah, but money makes it weird, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of families don't share this information,
Yeah.
right? Um, I'm in a unique position, but I think the norm is you don't generally know. And I know a lot of clients that don't want their kids to know.
Yeah.
And for reasons of, well, if they know how much money I have, they're going to slack off, or maybe they're not going to, not slack off, and not try as hard and not
Yeah.
push for growth in their business or promotion at work, or
I can
depending
see
on
that.
their kid, right?
Yeah.
You don't want that spoiled kid going, well, I don't have to worry about retirement because I'm going to get an inheritance one day,
Yeah.
right? Like, ugh. And we don't need to make a TV movie out of it, but most of my clients, thankfully, are like, I'm not expecting anything. If there's something, great. But let's do a plan like I need to be standing on my own 2 feet. And
Yeah.
that's the way I think it should be. So when it comes to that, parents, I don't think want to share so much, right?
Mm,
Yeah.
I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But knowing who the advisor is, who the accountant is, who the lawyer is, totally makes sense. And then from the parents' point of view, telling their kids who the executor is, really, that's pretty important, right? And
Yeah.
then maybe the executor has a relationship with the advisor
Yeah.
or advisors.
A lot of communication, a lot of information to share for sure.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So, final
I hope that
story as
works out.
Yeah, I hope for them as well. I'm actually gonna the thread actually was closed. There's no more comments, so we're not gonna be
Hmm.
able to get an update on that, but that's a really horrible situation. But I mean, that's I don't wanna say that's a normal thing to hear, but you hear it more often than not, which is kinda
Yeah,
sad.
it's
Just really,
horrible.
really sad. So,
Regulators
um,
have a tough job, right?
yeah,
Like
absolutely.
they ruin
Yeah.
it for the rest of us.
So we're going to get to our final story about making sure you are able to protect your money. I'm not going to read the whole story about this. It's a little bit more on the American side that no, not necessarily something you have to deal with in Canada about someone getting an outrageous copay billed after going through medical insurance.
Oh,
Someone said that their son, who's 21, who has some medical conditions, checked themselves into a center. Everything was supposed to be covered by their health insurance. And then they got a bill of $60,799.56 after that, and that they're going to be responsible to have to pay
oh
for
my
that.
God.
Bills show charges of 82,000, insurance payment of 21,000, and then it even goes up after that. As American healthcare is, the numbers keep going crazy. I'm not going to dig into all of that. But what
Yep.
made me think of this is about emergencies and
Hmm.
about what you should have and
Yeah.
how to be able to protect yourself if something does happen. Not necessarily, well, I mean, it could still be a medical emergency, could be a house emergency, a car emergency, it could just be a
Hmm.
family emergency in general. And where that
Yeah.
fine line is of making sure you have the money to be able to cover a family emergency, but also you don't want your money to be, sitting there
Doing
and not
nothing.
doing nothing. Yeah.
Yep.
And
Yep.
also too, where is that line of helping family too? Like money, as we say, money makes it
Mm.
weird.
Hmm.
That having money to be able to help family if there is an emergency too. So let's start though with that.
That's
That
cultural for sure. Hey, like
yeah,
whatever the norm is within your culture or family of, if my sister was sick and needed money, what am I going to
yeah.
do?
Let's start first off with the
Mm,
logistical side of it, then we'll talk about the family side of it. The
sure.
logistical side of it, what do you say to clients when it comes to like the
Yeah.
logistics about
Yep.
having some sort of emergency
Yeah. A buffer.
money?
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when people are first starting out, I mean, the standard is 3 months income, right?
Hmm.
And that's really hard for when you're starting out to have that much cash, set aside, but it's important, right? Especially when, they're buying a first home and there's invariably going to be, excuse me, the furnace that blows up or, some kind of flood or whatever. So there's that short-term need for sure. Insurance is really important, I think, house insurance,
Hmm.
tenant insurance. Even if you're renting an apartment, get tenant insurance. It's not that expensive. I won't go into my family on that one, Jeffrey. But it is, it's there in case something happens, right?
Yeah.
Um, So yeah, and I guess that 3 month number is just a rule of thumb. What makes sense, if you're buying a house and what's that furnace going to cost or what's, that repair bill going to be that's not going to be covered by house insurance. Have that set aside, right?
Yeah.
And then once your investment side of things start growing and you're comfortable and you've got savings and investments and it starts to build up, maybe that cash becomes something else like, hey, we can take from this pool if something happens, but now it's invested. It's been invested for a while. Maybe this money over here, we've been saving diligently and working hard. Maybe we can go take that vacation, right? So
Yeah.
you can repurpose that money later. But
Yeah.
having that to start off with, I think is really important. And in Canada, thankfully, we do not have that kind of
Yeah.
healthcare scare. I mean, there are for sure out of pocket expenses when it comes to like cancer and treatment and all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. But for the most part, we're covered. I have no friends that has a $60 medical bill from getting hurt.
From the cultural side of it, then, from people wanting to help family members, people wanting to help, others, especially if they're in a comfortable situation,
Hmm.
maybe especially a little bit later in life, what do you tell people, if they call and say, hey, I have, a nephew or a niece or whatever, and, I
Mm-hmm.
want to help them out with that, how do you advise people on that, when it comes to their money? I mean, you can't
Yeah.
tell them yay or nay, but,
Nope.
what do you say to someone that comes to you and says, hey, I want to help someone out like that?
Mm-hmm. If they have a surplus and they've got lots and they want to do it, by all means, right?
Yeah.
Help your family. And I see it more in like grandparents helping out grandchildren, right? Whether it be with education or, rent or something like that. They're just like helping them out, getting them over the hump. That's great. They love to do it. If someone's, month to month on their retirement income, that might be an issue. Or they're saving for that retirement, not quite there, and they want to take out a big chunk for whatever reason, just letting them know their decision 100%, but this
Yeah.
is the implication, right? Well, maybe you're delaying retirement for a period of time, or maybe you have to take out less in the future, right? So that's their call, and their values will determine whether or not they're going to do that. I haven't had it happen too much that it's been a huge impact, right? But
Yeah.
usually my clients will be like, well, if I do this, what's the ramification, right?
Gotcha.
Will
Yeah.
it fit into the plan?
Yeah.
Will I be okay? And
Yeah.
yeah, we'll go
Yeah,
from there.
makes sense. Makes sense. I
Yeah,
think we shared a lot of great information. You shared a lot of great
yeah.
information. I just kind of shared my ramblings with all of that, but some great stories with that. This was fun. We're going to dig into some more Reddit stories in
Nice.
another 2 weeks. So if someone has some situations maybe, or they just want to talk a little bit about their financial situation, how can they reach out to you, Chris, and talk
Yeah,
about their money?
foxfinancial.ca. Everything's
Easy.
right there. Yeah,
Easy to be able to do that.
welcome.
If you liked what you saw or heard today, check out our next episodes. You can subscribe on YouTube. You can subscribe on Spotify. You can subscribe on Apple Podcasts. Wherever you get podcasts or shows, we are there. We'd love to hear from you, so let us know what you think and join the conversation. That would be great. That's Chris Fox from Fox Financial. I'm Matt Haze. Until next time, thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you again soon.
Cheers.
Trademarks owned by Investment Planning Council Incorporated and licensed to its subsidiary corporations. Investment Planning Council is a fully integrated wealth management company. Mutual funds available through IPC Investment Corporation and IPC Securities Corporation. Securities available through IPC Securities Corporation, a member of the Canadian Investor Protection Fund. Insurance products available through Chris Fox.